first time I saw him, I almost didn't notice him. My apartment faced the back of the building where a narrow alley stretched between rows of brick walls and rusted fire escapes. It wasn't much to look at, just cracked pavement, trash bins, and a single street lamp that flickered every few seconds like it was struggling to stay alive. Most nights the alley was empty. That night I was brushing my teeth when I saw the shape. A tall figure standing at the far end of the alley. He stood just outside the edge of the street lamp's glow. I barely thought about it. Someone smoking, maybe. Someone waiting for a ride. But when I walked past the bathroom window 10 minutes later, he was still there. Exactly the same posture, same stillness. That was the first thing that bothered me. Not that he was there, that he hadn't moved. The next night he appeared again. This time he was standing slightly closer, just enough that the dim orange light from the street lamp touched his shoulders. I stood at the window longer than I meant to, staring down at him. He wasn't checking a phone, he wasn't shifting his weight. He was simply standing there, perfectly still, and his head was tilted upward toward my window. I stepped away from the glass immediately and pulled the blinds closed. But curiosity dragged me back 20 minutes later. He hadn't moved. Over the next week, the pattern continued. Every night at midnight he appeared. Every night he stood a little closer to my building. He never walked. At least not while I was watching. But somehow the distance between us kept shrinking. Soon he was standing directly beneath the street lamp. That was the first time I saw his face. He was smiling. Not a wide grin, just a calm, quiet smile. The kind someone gives when they recognize you, except I'd never seen him before. That night I slept badly. The next night I didn't sleep at all. I started watching him. Every night I sat in the dark beside the window. Sometimes I would look away for a moment. When I looked back, he would be closer, not by much. Just enough to make me question whether I remembered the distance correctly. Eventually he stood directly beneath my window, his face tilted upward, and for the first time, he spoke. "Why are you watching me?" His voice carried clearly through the alley. My heart started pounding. "I'm not watching you," I whispered. He tilted his head slightly. "Yes," he said calmly, "you are." After that night, everything began to fall apart. I stopped leaving the apartment. I stopped answering messages. The window became the only thing that mattered. Every night I watched him. Every night he smiled. And slowly, something terrible began to reveal itself. His face looked familiar. Too familiar. The longer I stared, the clearer it became. The same eyes, the same jawline, the same crooked smile. One night I leaned closer to the glass and finally understood. He looked exactly like me. He raised his hand slowly, pointed toward the alley. "Come down," he said softly. "Your turn." The neighbors called the police the next morning. They had heard laughter coming from my apartment all night. When officers forced open the door, they found me sitting beside the window, completely still, smiling. But the security cameras outside the building showed something strange. All night long, someone had been standing in the alley, looking up at my apartment window, watching. And that person was me. I found the story late at night while searching the internet for answers I wasn't sure I wanted. By that point, the man had already appeared 3 times. The first night I thought nothing of it. I had just moved into my new apartment in the city, a small place on the 6th floor overlooking the parking lot behind the building. It wasn't the nicest view in the world, but the rent was cheap and the job I had just started was close enough to walk. The first night I noticed him while making coffee. Someone was standing near the far fence of the parking lot, tall, still. I didn't think much about it. Someone waiting for a ride maybe, or someone smoking before heading inside. I remember glancing at him for a few seconds before turning away and going back to the kitchen. When I looked again later, he was gone. I didn't think about it again until the next night. The second night he was closer, not much closer, just enough that the floodlight at the edge of the lot illuminated part of his shoulders. At first I thought it was a different person, someone standing in a slightly different place. But something about the posture made my stomach tighten. He wasn't moving, not pacing, not checking his phone, just standing there. And his head was tilted upward, toward the building, toward my window. I closed the blinds after that. But about 20 minutes later, curiosity pulled me back. When I opened them again, he hadn't moved. The third night, I started feeling uneasy. I kept catching myself looking at the window while working on my laptop. Every few minutes, I would glance over. Sometimes I told myself I was being ridiculous. But when midnight passed, I stood up and walked to the window anyway. He was there, closer again, standing directly beneath the bright parking lot light now, and for the first time I saw his face. He was smiling, not a wide grin, just a quiet smile, like someone who knew me. I remember stepping away from the window immediately. My heart was beating harder than it should have. Something about that smile felt patient, like he had been waiting for me to notice him. That night I couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m, I started searching the internet. At first it was simple things. Someone standing outside my window. Man watching apartment building at night. Most of the results were useless. Stories about stalkers, urban legends, or sleep paralysis. Then I found the forum. It looked old. The kind of site people had mostly forgotten about. Black background. Gray text. Long threads with strange titles. One thread near the bottom of the page caught my attention immediately. The man at the window. My stomach tightened. I clicked it. The story inside the thread was disturbingly detailed. The writer described a man standing in the alley behind his apartment. Every night the man appeared. Every night he stood a little closer. He never moved while being watched. But somehow the distance kept shrinking. I felt my hands beginning to shake as I read. Because the exact same thing was happening to me, the writer described calling the police. They couldn't find anyone. He described staying awake all night, watching the man. He described the smile. Then I reached the final part of the story. The part that made my heart start pounding. The writer realized the man outside the window looked exactly like him. I stopped reading. Slowly, I turned my head toward my own window. The man was still there, standing beneath the parking lot light, smiling, watching. My chest tightened. I went back to the computer and looked at the writer's profile. The account hadn't been active in years, but the username felt strangely familiar. After a few minutes of searching, I found an article connected to the name. A local news report. A man had been discovered in his apartment 2 years earlier, sitting beside his window, completely insane. Neighbors said he had been laughing all night. Police said he kept repeating the same sentence over and over. He's upstairs now. My hands were shaking. I turned slowly back toward the window. The man hadn't moved, but something else had changed. Behind him, near the far fence, Another figure stood in the darkness. At first I thought it was my imagination, but when the floodlight flickered, I saw the outline clearly. Another man, standing still, watching the building, watching the window, watching me. And suddenly something terrible clicked into place. The story on the forum hadn't been a warning. It had been a record of the last person who became the man at the window. The first man in the parking lot smiled wider. Slowly, he raised his hand and pointed at the ground beneath him, like he was inviting me to come down. And somewhere behind him, the second man waited, smiling, for his turn.